This time, I'd now like to open up the Board Parish School Board regular session for Thursday, June 9th, 2022 to order. First item of business is to request Mr. Mike Green, principal at the Board Alternative School. If you would, Mr. Green, lead us in a word of prayer and the pledge of allegiance.
Dear Lord, we just thank you for this day and for allowing us to wake up and take part in it, Lord. I thank you for your sovereign power, Lord, and your mercies and your grace that you lavish over us. Lord, we come to you and I ask for contrite, humble hearts as we approach your throne tonight with boldness and ask that you would guide us through this meeting and through the rest of the school year. We thank you for a great and safe school year this year, Lord, but we want to start preparing for the future, Lord. And we just ask that you unite us as one spirit and one mind and help us to put all differences aside and not to have any selfish conceit or rivalry amongst us, but just help us to be unified and to do what is best for your children, Lord. And we just ask that you would help us to do everything in our power, Lord, to bring you honor and glory through our work here in the school system, and that you would always protect us from all harm, evil, and illness. Lord, just help us to honor and glorify you. Thank you for your finished work on the cross to defeat sin, death, and save for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, the next item of business is to adopt an agenda. All of you have an agenda in front of you. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Make motion.
Moved by Mr. Bowman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Taylor. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor of adopting the agenda as presented indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. The agenda is officially adopted as was presented. First item, to consider adopting the minutes of the May 12, 2022 regular meeting of the Board Parish School Board as published in the official journal. I'll let you get a copy of your minutes. Have opportunity to review. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as published in the official journal.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Manuel, second by Ms. Jackson. Well, I'm sorry. Any discussion on the minutes? Any corrections? Hearing none, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor of adopting the minutes of the May 12, 2022 regular meeting of the Board Parish School Board as published in the official journal indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. Minutes are officially adopted. Item number 2, to hear the superintendent's report.
I think, Mr. Goodreen, members of the board, we have Garrison Commander report from Tiffany tonight.
Good evening. So since we last saw you all, we had, and the commanding general had out some of your outstanding teachers and excellent kids out on the installation for our academic excellence ceremony. Mr. Cooley also joined us, so we were really excited, and we look to grow that event next year, and we were really happy that Boulevard Parish was able to participate. Very busy, and that's actually what Colonel Smith is doing today, is a final walkthrough of Freedom Fest. So it is our 4th of July celebration that we have in June now, because the Soldiers Block leave falls over 4th of July. So that most of our soldiers can participate, we have Freedom Fest middle to end of June. We have Jason Dorilla there. It is open to the public, so if you all are interested in attending, you can go to the Fort Polk MWR site. Go ahead and get a pass. If you all also are eligible to get year-long passes, so if you want to get one of those, then you can park on the installation and walk over to the event. We will have the Region 6 STEM Center there with an expo booth. They have been, so that's the STEM Center through the Board of Regents that's in Lake Charles that also services Boulevard Parish School Board. And they have received several partnerships with organizations that receive Department of Secretary of Defense grants. And so they're going to come up and showcase all of that. A lot of it's engineering. Some of it is a space camp in a box. We will be hosting one of those on the installation. And then we also have an opportunity for some teachers to come so that they don't have to drive all the way to Lake Charles. If it is closer, we're going to host some professional developments for Vernon and Boulevard Parish on the installation. So we're excited about that in partnership with those Department of Defense grants and the STEM Center. So again, thank you always for everything that you do, and we're just, we want to be able to give back. And so these are some of the ways we're trying to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I will say we do appreciate that banquet and while recognizing some of our teachers. Appreciate that. Okay. Southern Region Leadership Conference in New Orleans is July the 24th through the 26th. For school board members, please let Ms. Archer know if you would like to register for that conference. Ms. Kelly Stenard has been selected as a new purchasing agent effective Monday, June 13th. She will be joining us this coming Monday. Sales tax supplement for certified employees will be $2,850. For support employees will be $1,900. And for retirees, $379. And with that, Mr. Bidreen concludes the superintendent's report.
Any questions, Mr. Cooley? Mr. Cooley, we're about to go out for bids for the school at south and the classrooms at east, is that correct?
Correct.
Is there a copy of the plans?
About your Ritter Elementary and East Elementary.
Okay, that's what I mean. I'm sorry, east and south. Okay. Can we see the copy of the plans?
I will work to get you that, sir.
Okay.
I do not have it either, but I will work to get you a copy of
Okay. Well, I don't even have to have a copy, it's just somewhere where I can
that.
go look
I
at it.
mean, something you can see.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Ms. Vidrain,
Yep.
you were emailed a copy of these plans quite some time ago, but I'll make sure those are resent.
Okay, I appreciate it.
The renter plans I don't have on digitally, but I can certainly make that available as well.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3. To consider adopting the budget for fiscal year ending 2023 after having completed all requirements under Louisiana Revised Statute 39:1307, including public notice, public inspection, public hearing, and general summary. All of you got your budget? Looked at it? Any questions on it? Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the budget for fiscal year ending 2023 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Henry, second by Ms. Weldon. Any discussion on the budget? All right. Hearing none, chair will call for a vote. Pardon?
Tell Ashley I'll get with it later.
All those in favor of adopting the budget for fiscal year ended 2023 as presented indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. Budget is adopted. Item number 4, to appoint the official journal for year 2022-2023.
All right.
things I'm bringing to you tonight. Okay. Please consider appointing the Beauregard News as the official journal for the 2022-2023 year. And I have more information on that if you have questions.
Any questions?
It's the only choice we have, right? We always-
Right. Why don't we get a motion and then we can discuss it, but that's a legitimate question and it's asked every year.
Motion from West.
Okay, Mr. Taylor moved to appoint Beauregard Daily News. Is it Daily News still? Is that the name of it?
Let me get the exact one. It's the Beauregard News is what we had
Beauregard
said.
News,
Yes.
okay. As the official journal for 2022-2023. Second by Mr. Green. Now, Mr. Green.
So this is, what is the, what are the requirements to, like, what is the reasoning that we can, this is the only one to choose from? I mean, I don't really have a dog in the fight as
It's
to who
okay.
we use, but.
We actually have, that's what we printed out. So the qualifications of the newspaper shall have been published in an office physically located in the parish, which in the body is located for a period of 5 years. Shall not have missed during the period as many as 3 consecutive issues unless caused by fire, flood, strike, or natural disaster. Shall have maintained a general paid circulation in the parish in which the body is located for 5 consecutive years. Shall have been entered in a U.S. post office in the parish under a periodical permit in that parish for a period of 5 consecutive years prior to their selection. And B, under 4, is the provisions of the section relating to the 5-year requirement shall not contravene any contract existing between any governing body and a newspaper on and prior to May 11th, 1970, nor shall the 5-year requirement herein be applied to assessing the qualifications of a newspaper which was in existence on May 11th of 1970, nor shall any provision of this chapter prohibit a publication from becoming an official journal in Jefferson Parish, if the publication is qualified to publish judicial advertisements and legal notices in Jefferson or Orleans Parish, or has actually published official proceedings within 1 year prior to June 1st, 1986, of any municipal corporation, parish council, police jury, or school board within Jefferson Parish. And I think when we went over this, Ms. Pam, we had indicated number 1 on that, so that,
The only one that they do not meet is they do not publish that paper in the parish. It's published by the American Press. They meet everything else.
What do parishes do that don't have a parish newspaper?
Probably have to go to the closest that they have and probably delivered into that community.
I'm not trying to not support the Boulevard News, I'm just trying to
Good question.
understand
Good question.
how this works.
I mean, there's nothing wrong.
And especially now when the
Internet's good.
that is limited. Well, no, what I meant is the
One day.
publication
One
itself
day.
has been condensed.
Friday
Condensed.
publication.
When did they publish now?
Friday.
oh, my
That did affect some of our bids at one point.
Yeah, we got caught in a little dilemma there
I
for,
don't think we were the only organization in the
No.
parish that
No.
that happened to. And the cost went up also, right, on advertising?
did go up.
Do we when we do go out for bid, do we only place bids in that Boulevard News, or do we
They go on BidSync as well.
bid sync? So it's not, my point is, it's not constrained to only readers of the Boulevard News.
No,
Like,
it goes to BidSync, and then because I've learned a lot about purchasing in the last month and a half. We also send them out to ones that, for instance, the auditor. There is a requirement that we can send them out to so many that meet the statutories of the legislator for auditors within our area that we can send them to. So you're not constrained to just the paper.
And what Mr. Manuel was referring to, when we got caught in that situation, we had to advertise in the American press to meet the needs. This paper is basically owned by the American press.
You vote. Okay, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor of appointing the Beauregard News as the official journal for 2022-2023 indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. Beauregard News is our official journal. Item number 5, to consider lease agreement with Trio Community Meals for use of the cafeteria facilities at the Title I Media Center for senior meals from July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. Ashley, you covered that.
I have the lease agreement. It has not changed, but I can read it if you would like. The limited use agreement reads as follows. This agreement entered into as of the first day of July 2022 by and between Trio Community Meals, LLC, formerly known as Valley Services, LLC, hereinafter referred to as the contractor, and Beauregard Parish School Board of the Parish of Beauregard, hereinafter referred to as the Board. The contractor and Board do mutually agree as follows, that the Board, for the consideration of $80 per month, and on terms and conditions hereinafter set forth, does hereby agree to the use and occupancy of the contractor of the building located on Martin Luther King Drive, known as Beauregard Parish East Side Cafeteria. The contractor will be able to use the building for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and if the need arises, the school board will be able to use the facility at the same time the building is being used by the contractor, and that the school board will pay utilities and maintenance of said building. This agreement is effective with the signing of same in return for occupancy of said premises. The contractor shall maintain the following insurance coverages: a comprehensive general liability policy with a limit of $1 million per occurrence, $2 million combined aggregate limit for bodily injury and property damage, a comprehensive automobile policy with a limit of $2 million combined aggregate limit of bodily injury and property damage. Contractor will furnish the board with a certificate of insurance evidence such coverages as respects contractor's operation at the building. Contractor shall name the board as an additional insured on the above coverages. This agreement shall continue until June 30th, 2023, and at that time be reviewed and considered for renewal, or until such time as termination would be mutually agreed upon by the contractor and the board. Thus done and passed at my office in DeRidder, Beauregard Parish, Louisiana, in the presence of the undersigned competent witness and me said notary on the 9th day of June 2022 by the Beauregard Parish School Board, represented by David Vidrine, President, and the contractor Trio Community Meals, LLC, represented by Kevin McNamara, both of whom are duly authorized to execute this agreement.
Let me ask you something. In the second paragraph, the last sentence, contractor will be able to use the building 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And if need arises, the school board will be able to use the facility at the same time the building is being used by the contractor, and that the school board will pay utilities and maintenance of said building. Are we paying the utilities only when we use it, or are we paying the utilities all the time?
We're paying it 100% of the time. They pay $80 per month for use.
Does that cover the utilities?
No way.
4 hours a day?
Not in kitchen.
No.
Okay, well, you answered my question. Any discussion?
Any
How
idea
about
what utilities
a
are?
I'll make the motion.
Not right off, because it's tied to that whole bill.
Do you know how long these, so this is a yearly agreement, right? It comes up annually?
Yes, sir.
And how long has this been going on? Have we been in partnership with these guys on this?
A number of years,
Long
because
time.
they were Valley before they were Trio.
Let me get a motion. Is Henry moved to execute a lease agreement with Trio Community Meals for the use of cafeteria facilities at Title I Media Center for July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. I didn't hear a second. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Green. Okay, now, I think the questions were
Yeah.
they answered that you had.
Yeah, well, I
It's
just,
been going for, we've had this agreement for a while.
Yeah, I would have to look back to see exactly how
It was
long.
prior to '07, that's when I went over there, and it was going on at that time.
The lease has always been fixed $80 a month.
I think at one time.
I'm not sure about the number.
One time it was 50.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, chair will call for a vote. All in favor of approving a lease agreement with Trio Community Meals for July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. Agreement passes. Not comfortable with this.
oh, I want to research some more into this.
All right. Next item is item 6, to hear recommendations from the Finance Committee. All of these were brought forth from our committee meetings from Monday night. Which was,
86 through G.
Mr. Taylor has moved, excuse me, to Globo recommendations 6A through G. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bowman. Globo means to consider them all at once. Any discussion on whether or not to consider them all at once? The first thing we will vote on is whether or not to Globo. So all of those in favor of Globoing all items 6A through 6G indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. Okay, now all the items are before you. Any discussion? Hearing none, chair will call for a vote. All in favor of approving the recommendations from received from the Finance Committee would be those items 6A through 6G. Indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed indicate so by saying no. All the recommendations are approved. Item 7, to consider awarding bid for playground equipment for South Boulevard Elementary.
Do y'all have that bid in front of you? It is recommended to award the playground equipment and installation to Han Enterprises, Inc. For the total amount of $52,773. This reminder that this was for that grant that Southville Elementary acquired, and that will be what is paying for this playground equipment.
Close to B.
I'll make a motion to accept the award for playground equipment and installation to Han Enterprises for the total amount of $52,773.
Thank you.
Second, Ms. Jackson.
It's not your playground.
Mr. Bowman, second. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Any discussion on it?
Yeah. So was it just determined that the grant was $50,000, and so that's what they said, like, give us what you can for $50,000 kind of thing, or does anybody know? I'm just kind of curious. I've never been a part of buying playground equipment, so I'm just kind of curious how this process works.
They had a need for additional playground space. That kind of is what they had to work for.
Did they all bid on the same?
Yes, they all bid on the same thing.
My understanding, I think the school was going to be paying for the small difference.
This, I think it was the specs of the equipment.
is what,
Right.
and I don't wanna answer that to the T, but that's what
That's
they
what
have
they
to
do.
meet.
And so the
Randy,
idea,
did you want to say something?
That's correct. I'm waiting on the next item, but that is
Oh, I'm
correct.
sorry. I thought you-
But that is correct. I mean,
so it's just those,
if those items are on state contract, there are some different things that we can do. But it is difficult sometimes to get what you want on state contract. But other than that, then it's a bid process like they did, and those specs are required by law to be the same in the bid process.
so this will get them, like, once, like, set, they'll install it, materials, labor to install, including the required
That's included in this
mulch
bid.
and everything, all of that.
No cost to the district at all. The schools pay $27.73 out of their own funds.
They did write a grant.
Right, the 50,000 come from the grant, which is no cost to the district, and then they pay $27.73 out of the school funds.
Okay, any other questions? The motion before us is to award the bid to Han Enterprises Incorporated, Louisiana State Contractor number 37819, in the amount of $52,773. All in favor, indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, indicate so by saying no. Sure y'all are anxious. Looks like a good deal for all of us. Okay, item number 8. Consider approving the recommendation of acceptance for the South Boulevard High School Hurricane Laurel repairs to athletic facilities. Part 1, track resurfacing, fencing, and miscellaneous improvements.
Good afternoon, Board. Glad to speak to you, especially on this, because it is a project that we are finishing. It is part 1 of this phase that we need to do. The remaining part will be the stands and the press box. But it is not part 1 of the project. If you'll remember, we also had to redo the field, and we had a lighting project, and we have worked through with our insurance company and FEMA on that, and the remaining part will be, will involve the stands that ended up causing the damage to the field and the damage to the press box. But I'm happy to report that this portion of the project is complete, with the exception of a punch list, and that punch list will be reevaluated next week. And I feel very comfortable. It was a very small punch list. The contractor did a good job. So came in a little bit under budget, I believe. So just very happy with this, to see these things get completed, and happy to see this one. If you get a chance to stop by and look at it, it looks really good, and it's going to be able to serve those students for a long time.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion, and I think what you're asking is board approval upon completion of the punch list.
Correct.
In other words, you won't have to come back to us.
I will not. If this is approved, the punch list is very small, and it's not unusual for us to do this with the punch list. I wouldn't come to you if there were something on the punch list that concerned me.
No major expenses on the punch list.
No, nothing major. Some holes that didn't get filled in, and some concrete that we want to make a little more level. But and you have a copy of that punch list in your notes somewhere. So they're, like I say, I wouldn't be coming to you if the punch list was something that was major.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to accept the South Boulevard High School Hurricane Laurel repairs to the athletic facilities, part 1, with track resurfacing, fencing, and miscellaneous improvements. I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Daniel, second by Mr. Bowman. Any discussion?
So I still don't quite understand what we're approving. Like,
just-
the job is done and then you can pay
Correct.
them?
Right,
That's
job's
right.
done.
Okay.
And we have started to pay them, but to do final payment, we need this approval.
Okay.
And to go to the courthouse and file once we go to a bid, then we need this approval that this job is accepted.
Do we need to put them on the motion?
But you're saying that we probably need,
I'm just asking, because you have them.
upon the completion of
The
the
punch list.
punch list. What-
You can certainly put it that way if you would like.
I mean, we've already approved the bid. Right.
Yeah, the bid's
So it's
approved
not
and
really, we're not asking
all
them
we're,
for money again.
we are not.
Extra money or
No, we are
change
not.
orders, so it should just be approving that.
the project was completed. That's what we're,
Ms. Archer, will you read the motion?
The motion is to approve the recommendation of acceptance of South Boulevard High School Hurricane Laura repair athletic facilities. Part one, track resurfacing, fencing, and miscellaneous improvements. Did you mention the punch list?
Do we need to mention the punch?
I don't think it's necessary, but I would suggest to accept this project as is. Whether we had a punch list that is the one that you have or not, but obviously I would much rather have that punch list completed before, and we'll require that punch list to be completed before it's done. If there was a substantial something on that punch list, I wouldn't be coming to you to ask for approval to accept the job.
Any questions? I don't wanna hang it up, you know, I mean, I know y'all ready to proceed. I just didn't know legally if the punch list had to be completed before. And if it doesn't, well, then the motion we got signed. Okay.
If you withdraw your second, I can withdraw my motion and add pending completion of the punch list to that.
If
It
it's
sounds to
not
me
made-
like y'all be more comfortable doing that, and that is fine with me. So why don't you do that?
He'll withdraw his motion, say he withdraw his second. I would like to withdraw my motion and restate it, which will be, I'd like to make a motion, consider approving the recommendation of acceptance for the South Boulevard High School Hurricane Laura repairs to athletic facilities, part one, track resurfacing, fencing, and miscellaneous improvements pending final, pending completion
Of the items.
of the items.
Listed on the punch
Listed on the, and we can get a copy of that list if you would like that.
You should have one in your,
I'm saying she can add that list.
yeah,
Second by Mr. Ball. This is not gonna hold you up.
it is not.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed indicate so by saying no.
I have one other thing regarding this project and the other hurricane projects. I was reminded earlier today that the last day to file litigation for Hurricane Laura with your insurance is the last day of August. I've spoken to Ashley, and obviously at this point in time, we don't want to proceed with any of that at this point that we're telling you, but if you have concerns, I'm asking at this point in time for you to call myself, Mr. Lestage, or Ashley, fairly quickly. At this point in time, I can tell you that I don't have concerns. There was a period of time that I felt like things were moving fairly slow, but at this point in time, I personally don't have those concerns, but we don't have every one of those projects complete either. So if it is something that you feel like that we should consider litigation, appreciate Mr. Lesage bringing that to my attention, and so that you as the board, what I'm asking at this point in time is not to take any kind of action, but to, if you have those concerns, be aware, and then contact myself or Ashley, or Mr. Cooley, and we would get with Mr. Lestage and evaluate whether that would be a good move for us. At this point in time, I'm not telling you that because I feel like it needs to be done. I'm simply providing information.
we still having or somebody having the meetings with the insurance?
We met with the insurance company today,
So
actually.
it's still a monthly deal? or-
Yeah, bi-weekly.
Okay, all right, and y'all don't have any concerns?
Uh,
We don't meet with them, so we wouldn't know unless there was something out there that's not fixed that we had a concern about. If y'all are meeting with them monthly, y'all don't have a concern about it.
I don't have a concern that I think would meet the level of litigation. Do I continue to have concerns every day? Some, yes, but that would meet the level of litigation. I'm not sure that I feel like that would help us at this point.
And so there's no statute of limitations, it might be a crazy question, but on the amount that they, there's been different talks on how much that they were gonna pay us, and we've only gotten so much money, and they were still, when the group come and talked to us, they talked about a different number than we were actually hearing. So there's no statute of limitation on how much money we can go back. If our policy was for a certain amount, if we reach that mark, a 2-year mark, and they were like, no, that's all we got to pay, is there any concerns on that?
I'll look at it, but you should be okay as long as they're paying.
Okay.
If they tell you it's a full and final sum, we have a problem, but I'll look at that and make sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
What was the dates again?
It's the last day of August, is my understanding.
Item number 9, to consider final approval of policy file JCBE, public school choice, after completion of the waiting period. Okay, policy was approved. It was one that sits per se on the table for 30 days in case board members or the public has some questions about it before it's put into action and stuff. I'll entertain a motion for final approval of policy file JCBE, public school choice.
So
Moved by Mr. Green. I'll second. Second. I'll second. Mr. Bo. Any discussion on it? Hearing none, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor of final approval of policy file JCBE, public school choice, indicate so by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed indicate so by saying no. Final approval is passed. Item number 10, to discuss safe schools plan. Mr. Cooley?
Mr. Vidrine, members of the board, I received a call probably a couple of weeks ago, text, call with Mr. Taylor, who had some questions that he was being asked about safe schools and whatnot. Mr. Bowman also contacted me, came by and visited with me, asked that we consider this on the agenda. I came from he and Mr. Taylor both asking that we could discuss it. So that's what we have tonight, is to share some information. Share some information, not asking for anything to have to be done, but consider some information about it so that if there is something we need to pursue, we have an idea of what we need to look into as we move forward. So with that said, we also have Sheriff Herford here with us. Sheriff Herford, as you know, provides us with 5 deputies that are SROs in our schools. Chief Richard is also here. He provides us with one here in the city, SRO, that works with our schools here in town. So I asked them in case there was any questions that pertain to SROs or whatever and how they're being used, so that they could answer those. They can better answer those than probably Eddie or I. But I've also kind of turned the rest of the presentation, and Mr. Lestage is here because we sometimes have to bounce things off of him about how we handle some different ideas. But also, Eddie kind of heads up this challenging task for our whole parish. And so I've asked him to kind of give you a scenario, and he's got it broken down. Now, he is, if he gets intense now, just take it as it is. But he was in Baton Rouge yesterday at a conference with city police and other school people. And I know he was finding out some things because he shot me a couple of texts. But they were positive texts that said, Mr. Cooley, we're ahead of the game. We look pretty good compared to some others who are asking questions. So at this time, I'll turn it to Eddie and let him take it away. And then if there's questions, Mr. Dithering, refer it back to the board.
Just stop me anytime you need to. Thank you, Mr. Cooley. Board members, good evening. We do have a challenging task to keep our students safe, and so far, so good. So kind of way I look at school safety, I break it down into two categories, prevention, preparedness, and then response. Thankfully, we have just done the former, and hopefully we'll never do the latter. But so starting from simple to more complex, I'll start with some of the things that we have in place for the prevention part of this. One is, I don't know if you know, but by Louisiana law, all classroom doors are required to be locked during instructional time. So that definitely is a deterrent right there. We do drills monthly. We have red, green, and blue. Fire drill, bad weather, lockdown. Those are done by the principals at their discretion. The fire drills are due once a month. That's by fire marshal state law. We do those. But the code blue is what we would use in case we did have unauthorized person on campus or threat on campus. And we encourage the principals to do that as often as they feel it's needed, at least once a year. Getting into the technology side of it, it goes into the prevention. For the red flag kind of deal, we have a system through the Gaggle safety net, through the email, that anytime a student through their Chromebook or anything that's used on our system, there are algorithms that catch red trigger words, kill myself, suicide, shooting, gun, any of those. Those signal an email automatically to not only the principal and whoever the school is set up. I get a copy of that email. Mr. Ramsey gets a copy of that email. Those emails come in two codes. Orange, which is, I mean, you can't say anything's minor, but it's the less than minor. And then the red. I look at every single one of those. I read every one of them. And most of them have a file attached. I'll click on that file. Sometimes it's just the text in the class that actually the teacher put out that has a word in it. It catches everything. So it's not a big deal. Let the school handle it. Every red email I look at specifically, carefully, and even though the principal gets it, I will shoot that to the counselor at that school, the assistant principal of that school, and to the principal again, saying, look at this now. If I don't get a response, I will call the school and say, look at this now. Because that is usually, the reds are some suicidal thoughts, any kind of declarative statements, any kind of those things. So that has proven to put a lot of kiddos that are starting to voice concerning thoughts or ideas, that puts them in front of a trained counselor or one of our counselors fairly quickly, and they don't even know it's coming. Hey, how you doing? Let's talk. So I think that's been very effective. One step above that is our SEB counselors, which are social and emotional behavior counselors. We have 5, I believe, Mr. Cooley, throughout the parish. These are clinicians, I guess. They are a step up in the specialists that they have. They're studied in, and if a counselor sees the need or a teacher sees the need to put a student that is exhibiting behaviors in the classroom that are disturbing, if behaviors change, if students report that there's some dark social media posts being put on by a student, they can address that. So just one more step in the prevention side of it. If our SEBs, our counselors, our principals, whoever see something, or if a student makes a declarative statement, even if they get mad and they fail an English test, I'm going to shoot the school up. They are initially brought in as a discipline issue, and the principal or assistant principal does an assessment of that, and then that student goes through our TOV procedure, our threat of violence. The principal then makes a decision whether it is major or minor, for lack of a better word, and then the threat of violence team is brought in. It's consisted of the administrator, a counselor, and the SCB from pupil appraisal, the SCB counselor. They have a litany of questions. It's a 3-page survey, for lack of a better word, they go through. And those threat of violence evaluations have resulted in anything this year, last 3 years actually we've had it, from a severe disciplinary measure, which those students would come to me for a hearing. If they made a threat against a school, if it was proven that they were not going, if it was felt, I should say, felt that it was anything but an anger, that student's not getting off scot-free. So I see them for the discipline issue, all the way to students being required to be PEC, severe, call the hospital, mom, you're not bringing it back, you take him to the doctor, that kind of thing. And those students are not allowed to return to school until they have a safe to return letter. That is a process that we put that child is the responsibility now of the parent to go see either their primary care physician or a mental health therapist, specialist, and they are not allowed to return to school until they've been interviewed and cleared by that medical person. We don't have anybody on our staff that has that degree. We make that be a complete, separate, outside checks and balances, basically to keep us safe at school. So, keeping going through that, the TOV procedure is where we catch most of our red flag kids. That's very helpful and has proven to be very effective. Kind of building up, we have a parish safety team. That is one faculty member from each campus. It's made up of teachers, cafeterias, administrators. And a couple of years ago, we sent out, when this team was developed, we sent out surveys. You probably remember I gave you a report on that a couple of years ago. We did an elementary survey, 4th and 5th graders, 6th graders, depending if they were at upper, and then a junior high and high school to see what they felt about, what was their take on their school safety. So when that came back, we analyzed that data. Each principal took the summary of their surveys and did a campus evaluation. At the same time, we were looking for weaknesses in the physical plant. If you remember, I was still principal at the junior high when Sandy Hook happened in 2012, and that was right at Christmas time. And by the time we came back from Christmas, I think y'all had to emergency prove some funds maybe, but we put fencing everywhere to try to harden the school, all the schools there. I know that at junior high we put up probably 100 foot of fencing around our sidewalks to keep them inaccessible from just walking on campus. I can't promise, I don't know what other schools did because I was, like I said, I was at the junior high. So we've done that. The Louisiana State Police, unfortunately these are triggered kind of like we're here tonight. These ramps up in evaluation are triggered by an event, unfortunately. The 2018 was the Parkland, Florida, the Stoneman High School shooting. And at that point in time, Louisiana State Police, at their level, said we've got to get involved. That's actually who presented the seminar I was at yesterday. And if you'd like to talk to me about that, on our time, I'd be happy to tell you there's some very interesting things that came out of that survey, that seminar yesterday. But Louisiana State Police got involved at the school. They went to every single private and public school in Louisiana and did it was a 110 question survey. Two troopers came to each school, and I went with them to every single school. This was the fall of 2018. They did a survey, they did a physical walking around, and they made recommendations to each school. And then, of course, in the prevention, nothing is more deterrent to anybody causing ill will than an SRO visible, that squad car, that Yukon sitting right there with the sheriff's badge on it in the parking lot. So that's kind of what the prevention portions that we have. Before I go on to the trainings, anybody have any questions on those little aspects that I discussed there? All right, we'll keep rolling. So along with the prevention, we also require multiple trainings, or we've had multiple trainings. Every year, our faculty members are required to go through 4 or 5 Safe Schools training. If you don't know what Safe Schools are, it's a subscription that we pay for. It's not free, but it's well worth it. They are videos, trainings, and they have to it's easily to view. They take a test, they get a certification, certificate that's kept on record. We did everything from sexual harassment to mandated reporting. We use it for vape prevention and the discipline side of it. It has hundreds and hundreds of areas but we use it specifically for safe schools to do that for, and that is every year. There's 4 videos they have to watch. In 2019, 2020, our nurses presented a Stop the Bleed. Of course, this is out of the Florida shooting. Our nurses were trained themselves and came back and presented the Stop the Bleed training. I have some information on that if you'd like to see that. But that is done. That was done back then. The sheriff and the city law enforcement agencies in the summer of 2018 put on the alert. This was a big endeavor on their part. Their officers came to our schools faculty-wide. There was not a faculty member, regardless of your responsibilities, pay grade, or teacher, custodian, cafeteria, they were all required to participate in that. And the alert stands for the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. It was in-depth, it was very detailed, and it was disturbing to see what actually happens when it hits the fan, basically. The premise of the alert, and guys, speak to me if I'm wrong, is run, hide, fight. Run if you can, hide if you got to, fight if you must. So our teachers went through that training. And then then we went through the school shooter in service, which is provided by them. This is tough. All right, we also have OSEP training, which is for the emergency office preparedness. We are, Mr. Cooley and I deal with them every monthly almost. Mostly it's been for hurricanes, because that's what hits us most regularly. But we also do have the school active shooter component of it, and obviously since Texas, we'll get that going. We've had mock shooting drills in schools. We've had several in the last few years. If you haven't been to one of those, it's revealing. So I think we have some talk about doing some tabletop exercises. I know that's all been discussed. Everything is on the table to discuss for the upcoming school year, and we're trying to get that done this summer, and so that we can take that back to our teachers in August. Okay, so that is the prevention and the training side of it. Before we go on, any questions on that before I get to the response? Okay. All right. On the response side, which is something that I hope we never ever have to see, if something were to happen and teachers have the cognizant ability to flip through this book while things are happening, this booklet right here that every teacher has in their classroom deals with what you're supposed to do. Okay? They'll tell you that when the drill is flowing, fine motor skills are the first to go. So, but we do have this. It is at their beck and call. They have it permanently displayed. It's usually by most doors. It's something that I check for just every time I walk into a classroom. I'm looking for that red book. Sometimes it's an official walk-in check. Sometimes it's just me, just walking in if I happen to be in a band hall, checking on my band directors. The next thing we have is AEDs. We have at least, I think we have at least 3 AEDs in every school, and the older the student gets, the more we have in their school. So we have them displayed around the school at a moment's notice. And that's not just for in case something were to happen. We've had to use them before. Teachers or visitors to the campus have had heart issues and that kind of deal. So they're just good to have, period. Specifically pertaining to a school shooter, we have out of our parish safety team, one of the things that we did, and I want to, she's not here tonight, and it's been a long time, but I want to thank Andrea Ferguson, because every classroom has a safety bucket. It is a 5-gallon bucket that has been in their room. It's been untouched. I hope it stays untouched forever. It has gauze pads. It has a tourniquet. It has all things that you would need in case there happened to be a shooting and you can actually render aid to a student. That, along with the Stop the Bleed training, goes hand in hand with that. We also have had for years our Safe Schools plan. You might call it the Crisis Management Plan. There's a misconception on that. There is some components in that for prevention, obviously. the schools must do this, principals must do this, I must do this, either annually or that kind of deal. It is basically the chain of command, what happens when law enforcement hits the ground, what we're required to do, that kind of deal. It is an after or I should say, it is a during or after action document. It is not specifically before somebody walks in the door. And then the thing that we have that is most active and used, and I say should be used, is our rave panic button. And I do have, and we've talked about this. I've given you this this sheet before, but we'll go around. I'll give you another copy, and we can kind of look at it, refresh your memory. This app is on every teacher's phone. It's on my phone. It's on Mr. Cooley's phone. It is first response. Basically, is somebody, a teacher, a custodian, somebody is going to be the first one to encounter the bad man. And when that happens, you slide it open. It gives you 5 options. And even if you happen to accidentally bump it, it won't activate. You got to hold it intentionally for 2 or 3 seconds, and even at that point, it'll ask you, "Are you sure?" Because it's about to bring everybody a running. So, if you do have an active assailant on your campus, it automatically, because everybody is set up, our schools are geo-fenced. Okay, so when this happens, it will automatically notify everybody that's on this app with an alert, like a glorified text message, and it will shoot her in Miss Smith's room, or shoot her on B Hall, whatever it might be. Code blue, locked down, and it goes through that. At the same time, it's dialing 911, it's calling city, police, sheriff, state department, EMS, who else? I mean, who else comes around? Fire and rescue. Everybody on the list that we've already been set up is coming. So that's basically it in a nutshell. There's a lot of pre-work that is not easy on the principals, because they have to load it's a template, they have to load every name, every teacher, every phone number, double check, make sure it's correct. But it's a one-time thing. Once you get it loaded, you're good to go. The teachers, they are encouraged, highly encouraged to put this on the phone, but we've been talking to Mr. Lesage about this. We cannot force a teacher or any employee to put anything on their personal phone. So, but I don't know, I haven't heard of anybody that's refusing. It is a living document. It is a living deal. When teachers retire or somebody quits, leaves your campus, you take them off of that, you replace that with the new person. It can be changed week to week, day to day, month to month, and there'll be a lot of changeover, of course, when we go to a new school year. So, any questions on that? Okay. Okay.
I like this. Bad.
Okay. So I will tell you one thing. When I go to these conferences, I assume that we're behind the curve. I assume that I'm missing, because I'm deadly. That scares the crap out of me, that I'm not going to have done something to protect our kids. But let me tell you, what I texted Mr. Cooley yesterday was some of these school systems are stuck in 2010. In 2012 is when Sandy Hook happened. That changed the world of education for security. Some schools still are not even to Sandy Hook time. Did a lot of talking yesterday. I gave away my email and my phone number 8 times, at least 8 times. They loved this. People want this. As soon as they send me the email, I'm sending them to Carrie Iflin. She's going to send them the prototype of this. They don't know what an SEB counselor is. They don't know what a safe to return school letter is. How are you keeping your kids safe if you're letting a student that's threatened your school? I got asked yesterday, it's not against the law to send a kid home for a safe to return letter? how can you let that kid stay in school? We got to take care of his mental health. And that took as much time yesterday, the mental health side of this since COVID. I'm getting on a little tangent here, but that's the scariest part of this. That's what's triggering all this mess. That's what happened on May 24th in Texas. Mental health is what's got these kids sideways, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of catching those kids before we become a statistic. I'm gonna read it for you, because the most troubling sentence that I heard yesterday was from the gentleman who is the security supervisor. He's a retired police officer for all of Caddo Parish schools. That's his only job. He's got a $7 million budget, just that one man for Caddo Parish. He said, I've got 400 people under my umbrella, but here's what I tell them. You do everything you can, knowing you can't do everything. We got to stop one kid every time. They've got to get it right once. We got to stop them every time. So we're trying to catch them. That was my day yesterday. It was not fun. If anything from our chief and our sheriff would like to follow up, y'all be happy to take the floor.
Just be happy to take whatever questions y'all may have of us.
Eddie, if I may.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
I think everybody in here shares your concern. Certainly appreciate it. But I think we really ought to be doing this every year. You know, honestly. I don't know if you put it in policy or it's just an unwritten rule that seems like summer's the best time. We need to review this and sort of like. But does your group, who consists of a group that works with the students or tours the students or whatever?
Do you want the parish safety team?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have their.
Well,
I mean,
You don't have to give a name.
No, I
It's
won't.
teachers,
It is.
custodians.
It is. We get a sampling from all different levels of the school. We have, teachers. We have assistant principals. We have a counselor. We have Mr. Insminger's on it. Sorry, didn't throw me a name out there. A school nurse is on there. And just it's a mixture of all the levels of the school.
Where I'm going is,
Okay.
before we start requesting stuff or wanting to change stuff and all, I honestly, personally think it would be advantageous as a board member to go to these schools. And if y'all give us the time and the expertise to say, here's what we're looking at, and here's some areas that are vulnerable or maybe need addressing, and give us some ideas. Some of them maybe can't do it, or it wouldn't be practical to do it, or whatever. But I don't know if it's appropriate right now to come in and say, well, I want this for my school, or I want this. We may be asking for the wrong thing, I guess is what I'm saying. So I think we all need a touch of reality to go out there and actually walk these campuses. And some of the things we're hearing that are concerns, do we want this? Let's hear from you and the Lease and the people at that school to say, well, if we do that, this might occur. Or, yes, we really need this. And that way it gives us something to plan for, go forth with, start pursuing it. What kind of finances is it going to take, and what kind of resources and stuff. And I'm hoping you do this in the summer.
Well, it's, when we meet with the principals in our back-to-school admin meeting, school safety is always one of the topics that I cover. But as in human nature, when things are what we call blue skies, when things are rolling fine, we do it, make sure you do this, and we kind of roll on. It unfortunately takes a tragedy to ramp it back up. And so, to say that it gets addressed every year. It's not, I'll be honest, it's not harped on. Principals have their responsibilities. Here's your information, go forth and give it to your staff. And they're trusted, and they do. They do what they have to do. They pass the information on, they run the drills, they pass on the information. But when there's something that occurs, such as we had on May 24th, it gets everybody's attention. had that situation happened on January 24th, we'd have been here February, and that would have been extremely difficult trying to assure everyone that we are doing what we're doing while kiddos are still in school. You know, but we do have the summer. The principals are very aware of what they will be asked to do.
I guess
to
what I'm
review.
asking is if we can indulge on you
Absolutely.
and other experts, throwing these people out, to maybe set up a walkthrough at each school. Now, I don't want to form a committee, I don't know if every board member wants to go to every school, but make that option available, and would strongly encourage you, if you could, to make the schools, per se, in your areas and stuff, and just show us what y'all are looking at, show us, you know, what we need to be looking at and addressing it, and some of the concerns.
Well, what we on the safety side of it, and I think I shared this with Mr. Bowman this morning. The younger the student, the easier they are to protect. The older they get, the more freedom they have, the more areas of the campus they're exposed to, and the line is, where do you want security versus aesthetics, convenience, ease of traffic flow. So those are all things that are looked at on a school by school basis. Right now, there's one way in, one way out at KR Hanchy. And even though you go in the front door, you're not going any further unless you have malicious intents. Our high schools, you know, just the nature of the beast. You can walk around kind of anywhere, and those are the ones that are the most concerning. You talk about experts. I know you were looking through me talking to these gentlemen.
I wasn't looking through you, but I was looking at those.
But like I joked yesterday, and it struck me, and like I said, I normally don't speak up in this, but the 300 people in that room, this is kind of funny thing I told Mr. Cooley this morning. Trooper Toops, who's leading this from the state police, he said, I am now the kindergarten cop. I'm used to writing citations, investigating traffic, narco, drugs, those kind of things. Now I've got to go in and look at these schools. I stopped the man mid-sentence and said, you feel like kindergarten cop. I'm Barney Fife. I'm a band director, came through the administration part, and now I'm the safety officer. I said, I don't even have the one bullet. I said, you look at it from my side, at least you have the training. We've had to learn this on the fly. So that's kind of where we are. We do what we can, what we have. There are grants out there. I've never written a grant, but there are some grants out there. We talk about funding. I don't think that this has to, I'm not going to make any promises, but I don't think this has to come from Beauregard budget. I think there's some things that we can do. Some of them are competitive. Some of them are you apply for it, you get it. And they range from a little bit to a lot, but we have to show what we need. So,
I think that's what, I've even talked to some people in the room about this. I think what David's saying is, you know, I think each school should have their own committee. I know is that a parish-wide committee that you
well,
have?
and I'm glad you said that, Mr. Mann, because yes, and I did not go through that. That our parish team, each school member, is they go back to their school and they have a 3 or 4 team member that includes their principal and admin and a few other teachers. So each school does have their own school-wide safety team.
So they do have each
They
school
do.
should have a
Now-
safety team on their own. But, you know, I know you mentioned 2018 a lot.
It is.
And so that's almost been 5 years.
Yes.
So if we're not reviewing that, you know, probably are, but I think it should be a yearly, possibly, you know, hey, if you're on this team.
Well, COVID kind of got in the way.
That's correct.
And,
I get that. The
and-
hurricanes
yep.
and those type of things do get in the way. But I would also like to see to go outside of the scope of just people in your community, you know, somebody from your community, your teachers, your principals. I'd like to bring in law enforcement, you know, maybe somebody from the sheriff's department, the state police, or somebody to come in and look, because that second set of eyes sometimes is just something that you walk by every day and do not notice it. Like I told somebody, I work in a refinery, and 2,000 pounds of hydrogen is right there in that pipe. You walk by it every day, it doesn't do anything to you. I've been there when it does do something to you, and I hope it doesn't happen to anybody. But, you know, you gotta respect it. If you're not seeing it, you're not respecting it.
Well, and our campuses did have all that in 2019. State police, they came and did a ground look. Each campus did get a review by 2 state troopers that have done this. I think they did 1,100 schools. Just these two guys did 1,100 schools that school year. So we did have some, and they make recommendations, and the principals tune it up. But we are, I mean, look, these guys have my cell number. I have their number. We talk, especially through the SROs. We are in constant communication. We do. There's not, just regular interactions at school that need police attention. We do have a very good relation. Tell me if I'm lying, guys. But we do have, I think we have a very good relationship with both departments. And I count on that.
One thing I question, we already have some fencing in place in some of the schools. And I see the gates are left open and so on and
That's
so
where
forth,
you're-
and I'm wondering about that.
Well, everybody, I hate to say this, but everybody should be living their life right now at level orange. You should be walking through with your head in the clouds, but you shouldn't also be looking for every gunman around every corner. But you should be at level orange where you're aware of your surroundings. When things don't happen in a long time, gates get unlocked. Doors to classrooms stay unlocked. And I think it was in the alert, one of the most interesting things that one of the officers said during the training was that the assailant is looking for the quickest, easiest, fastest way to do damage. A locked door, they're not going to spend time, effort, or bullets on a locked door. They're going somewhere else. They're going to find an easy access. So just a locked classroom door can save your kiddos. But Singer, I love how Singer's done. Singer is one of the easiest, one of the better protected schools that we have.
We had so many complaints when we put up the.
I love that fence. I wish
love
every
that
school had it.
fence, But we had so many complaints, and I was there just the other day after the shooting in Texas, and it just went through my mind. Okay, parents, how do you feel about this today?
Yes, ma'am. And it's a good looking fence too. I mean, it's not hurricane fence. It's nice.
Right. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that, a principal, I see former principals here and stuff, and as a principal, you know where that spot is. You've caught kids there, you've seen somebody walk through, and as a board member, you might be like, man, yeah, look, the fence ain't up in the front. That ain't it. There's places.
Well, see,
and that's what I'd like to see them identify, to where if we need money, we don't have grants, but the board would just have to dedicate some funds to whatever the top priority is at each school, I think would help a lot.
See, and there's different philosophies on fencing. I am not an advocate of a perimeter fence. You can cut a hole in the fence. You can hop a fence. I mean, the fence at Carver is 4 foot. That's not going to stop anybody. Where the perimeter, the safety perimeter starts is if that hallway door that leads to that playground, if that's locked. And then if it's not, if your classroom doors are locked. Because once somebody breaches your inner sanctity, it's going to break wide open. You've got to keep them in the grass outside your building and let them keep walking around until somebody spots them.
I agree with Mr. McGreen. I think he made a really good point. And I think we should kind of do an individual evaluation. I know both Mr. Manuel and I have very recently talked to school administrators in South. But it also helps to have fresh eyes. I was at Dritter 3 times this week in the morning dropping off kids to basketball camp. I'm just kind of looking around. I'm seeing things, okay. Probably a good rationale to functionality, but maybe there's something that can be addressed with fresh eyes. The other thing I would like is us to look at, and we're so grateful for what these 2 gentlemen provide to us, but I mean, there could be a point that maybe us, the parish, needs to somehow fund some additional school resource officers. I know there are other parishes that do that, so it wouldn't be uncommon. I know y'all are strapped for cash too, just like every other political organization. And if it's something that the board can't do, I mean, I sure would like to get the freedom of even just try to seek maybe private donations or private funding. I mean, especially in a city like Dritter, y'all probably can come up with that funding a little bit easier. It might be a little harder in the rural schools, but I'm sure there's people who would invest in security. for our children if we can't afford to provide it in the budget. And it's not something we didn't just decide upon tonight, but something we need to think about.
That's why, again, Ray, I think the first step
Right.
is, as a board, we need to try to educate ourselves, we need to hear from these people, and we need to look on site. There's a lot of things that I think we might want to institute this. Once I walk the campus and hear from the people that are there every day, or the police, it's like, well, that's a nice thought, but it may not work. Or I may be overlooking something, and they're saying, that should be an area of concern right here. I mean, if you consider this as the other, then we sort of getting our heads together, and let's face it, I hope we're not gonna have the same exact list for every school. You know, we'll have differences between elementary schools and high schools. And you might have differences between K or Hanchey and lower elementary at South or whatever, but I just think it'd be very advantageous if y'all could work with us, Mr. Cooley, on that, and let's do some site visits and hear from these people on site.
Bring your comfy shoes, we'll go walking.
I also think, just as, you know, we're about to work on an extremely large project of building a new elementary school here in DeRidder, do you think, and I've seen the plans, and I do feel like it addresses this adequately, but just making sure that from the design standpoint that we are controlling access the best that we can, you know,
It's easy, better do it up front.
yeah, I mean, that's the, you know, and I will say this, just walking the halls at like South, so the newest school currently that we have is the lower elementary at South Boulevard, and I can say this, that school is very controlled in terms of entry and entry points, exit points, just in my personal opinion, I mean, but, so just making sure that as we go forward and we build more schools in the future, and the boards after us, that this is always just a point of focus, is that we're, you know, that we take these things into consideration from the design standpoint, because that's where it's easiest. You know, most of our schools were built in the early 70s currently, you know, if you look across the
Or earlier.
or yeah, 60s and 70s. So, you know, things were very different then. And so now we're trying to kind of cover, you know, modernize our schools for the times we live in, and so and that can be problematic. And so as we build in the future, just again, let's make sure that we take. I think we all agree with that. Like, let's make sure to focus on.
Well, Mr. Green, I can set your mind at ease a little bit when y'all approve that new school being built. One of the things that I spoke with Mr. Cooley about and Mr. Ramsey was it has to be designed with safety in mind. 90 degrees line of sights. DeRidder High School does not have that. It's built on an octagon everywhere. It's hard to patrol. You know, you wouldn't build a DeRidder High School today. But in 1972, it was state of the art. People came from all over. My mom was teaching. I mean, now the format has changed. You want square line of sights, and I hope. And I have not seen the plans, but that was my request when that became clear that it was going to happen. So.
And I would also add, we have the two gentlemen here. I know they met with some of their people yesterday. I know I'm next in their line of coming to talk to, because I got that from the OEP director this morning, Scott Greenman. But I do appreciate what they're putting together now, and they will share with us, with Eddie and I, because I told Scott this morning, don't need me meeting with you, I want Eddie or Card or whoever available, because Card's on the transportation end. Also, because that's another thing we try to make sure we're safe in doing. But I know we got some tabletop exercises coming up, and possibly gonna get in a couple of schools before we get students there to look at some things. So I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all, not just for the SRO standpoint, but you've always tried to work with us in what we put together. So thank you. Yes, sir.
I did have a question about the SRO real quick, if we have a minute. Sheriff Herford, I know that we had, and Chief as well, I know that we had said that we had 5 SRO officers across the district, as well as 1 DeRidder Police Department officer at one of the city schools. how do we manage the DeRidder schools with campuses being separated within the city? Like, how do we work that with?
I'll let them answer. So, you want to come up?
Go ahead.
So presently, the sheriff's office has an SRO in every school in the parish outside the city limits. Inside the city limits, Chief Richard has an SRO, and I have an SRO that works inside the city as well. And they're very rarely in the same place at the same time, and make a constant kind of a revolving door to the schools daily. So if Officer Westmoreland is at DeRidder High School, then my SRO may be at Carver or at one of the others. You know, they try to spread themselves as far as they can to make sure that we get as much coverage as we can with what we have. And look, there are 6 facilities inside the city, and it would be great to have some more SROs to help split that load. You know, and it's like South Boulevard. You know, that school is growing so fast, we would love to put another one down there. But as y'all know, with the economy the way that it is and budgets as being what they are, you know, it's very expensive to put a new officer in the department. So we're limited by our budget at this point. That's not to say that down the road we wouldn't be able to do it, but it's very difficult to do it right now.
I know you have a substation at Maryville and at Ragley, and you're currently putting one in East. Are those substations manned?
They'll be manned most often during the day. There'll be detectives that are assigned there, and the thought in the locations of where they are, some advanced thought went into place about just in case we had something like this, we had people who could respond from a much closer location than trying to respond from DeRidder. And I think, you know, we'll have patrol assigned. Ragley is in the process. We've got to tear it completely down to dirt to meet FEMA's requirements. So we've got a temporary office set up in Ragley that is manned during the daytime, but you know, at nighttime it's people coming there to do work, you know, do reports or do whatever. You know, we don't have somebody sitting there in the office 24 hours a day. We just don't have the people to do
They're
that.
close to schools.
Yes, they're all located very close to schools, probably within 2 minutes.
Right.
And we're actually looking at another, the Beauregard Parish Library just opened up their new location down in Singer. I'm trying to see if I can afford to get an office in there. It wouldn't be a substation, it would be just an office. But if I can get an office there, then that puts another officer that much closer. You know, and Chief Richard and I have a little bit different situations because all of my schools are very remote and the response times are going to be more increased than what he's going to have in the city. So that's what Mr. Cooley was talking about. We actually had a meeting yesterday. We're going to try to tabletop some exercises, and Chief Richard and I, we're very close even outside of work, so we work well together. And we want to make sure that our policies mirror each other, and we're going to train our guys so that everybody, whether you're a deputy or a police officer, all of us are on the same sheet of music, because when something happens, that's not the time to try to figure out how we're going to work together. So we actually are having rifle training this week, but we're going to put this training together between our interagency training so that we all know what we're doing and we're all on the same page.
I know when y'all first started providing these services, there was a lot of concern in DeRidder with only 1 or 2 resource officers. But y'all sort of qualmed some of our concerns with what's the average response time in DeRidder?
For the city of DeRidder, we're looking at 4 minutes. So 4 minutes is our max. You know, we have had times in 2-minute time, but it's just depending on where the officers are in the city. Are they on a call already and stuff like that? But the overall average, and we run, I think it's around 10,000 calls a year for service. That's what gets put into the CAD system, and it spits out like 3.8 is our average response time in the city limits.
So
It's fairly
ours
fast.
has a little bit more factor in it. And a lot of it depends on if we have deputies that are close to the substations. If they're at the substations, it's probably 2 to 4 minutes. But just to give y'all some information, and I know Mr. Cooley's heard this before, the average active shooter event lasts 4 minutes. And the average police response time is 4 minutes. So that doesn't mean that we kill him every time, although that does happen substantially if he's not taking care of that himself. But it's just coincidental. I don't think it's coincidental, but when you look at it from start to finish on the action and then start to finish on the reaction is exactly the same period of time. And like Craig talks about, in the city of DeRidder, it's 4 minutes. So there are a lot of factors that go into that, but some of the training that we're planning upcoming is we don't want anybody to know what we're doing until we do it, because we want a real test. We want to test our people for real. We want to know if they're, what their response time is from the time that they get the call to the time that they get to the school. And then we want to know what the response time is from the time they enter the school until the situation's handled. And you can't simulate that if they know that thing is coming, but there are a lot of safety factors that go into that as well. So that's something that's on tap for us.
So I tag on to what Sheriff Herford is saying. Get ready, because you may get a couple of calls. There will not be students in that school yet, but there will be faculty there as well as administrators. And they will not know prior to.
We'll make every effort. We'll put it out multiple times a few minutes before that it happens, that this is a drill, both publicly and to our people. And then we'll stop from the response time to get there. We'll pause it, download everybody, make sure everybody is safe, and then we'll start the time again when they actually enter the school to see what happens, and we want to test them to start with so we know how to better train them, and to make sure that we're addressing all the issues that need to be addressed. And I was going to say this, one of the things that we talked about yesterday, communication's always a big issue for us, like radio communications, phone communications. South Bow is particularly bad once you're inside. DeRidder, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that they had put some kind of a blocker, a cell blocker or whatever. So that affects us as well, and our radio frequencies and our cell phones are very similar in frequency, so we expect that they would have problems there, as far as communication on radio or cell phone. So, but those are things that we want to test and see what we're doing, or see how we can be better.
I feel like they're doing their part, and I guess such a big part of this probably is school resource officers, regardless of what the situation is at each school, and that's why I just want to highlight that specifically. That, we need to start trying to team with y'all and figure out if there's ways that the board can help and possibly find funds to add. So that we're not playing as quickly as they're playing catch up, they're still having to play catch up, right? With
Yes.
response time. So
Well, for us, it's more of a refresher to make sure and to test and analyze to make sure that what we have had in place still works and that it works effectively, and if we need to adjust it at all.
And those SROs are just valuable resources because they're on the campuses every day, just like all y'all staff members. So they're seeing the new upgrades, this was built over here and they put this in. Something that patrol officer had been in the school in 6 months to a year and didn't see that new upgrade to that wing or something. So we rely on them for all that communication to come back to us. God forbid if we ever had to go in that section.
In our meeting yesterday, we've considered some options about, none of us know what happened at Uvalde exactly. We don't know the details. You got multiple versions of what it is. But for example, if those police officers made entry and they were in the hallway and he either had the door barricaded or they couldn't get into the door, so they had to sit there and listen to shots going off. Well, just so you know, our policy, both of our policies, it doesn't matter if it's you and somebody else or just you. Whether it's the SRO or if the SRO's off, the first person that gets there goes to the gunshots. And that means if there's wounded or dead, they step over them, they're going to the gunshots. But one of the things that we are considering is potentially putting a shield, a ballistic shield in every SRO car, and then maybe a breaching tool, you know, so if these guys in Uvalde couldn't get into the door because they physically couldn't do it, because they didn't have the equipment, if we've got a breaching tool in every SRO car and a shield, that will speed that process up. So that's something that we're considering as an option. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's right, because we can't depend on our SRT unit or SWAT. You know, now they call themselves SRT. They just like that acronym better, I guess. But they're specially trained guys, but it takes 45 minutes to activate them, get them geared, and roll them in. And we can't wait 45 minutes. That's not. So we have to have the patrol, and they have to have the tools, just like SWAT would have, mechanical breaching, you know, blasting breaching, whatever they're certified in. So, and that's what in this drill, we're going to test ourselves. This is what these drills do, these tabletops. That's why we don't want anybody to know, any of our guys to know. It is it's happening. What do we do? And they better start reading their policies and getting up to speed. And that's what we expect out of them.
And we're also doing a policy review, a joint policy review, to make sure that they're the same, so that there's no question, like I said earlier, about who's going to do what and how it's going to be done and when it's going to be done, from whether it's his department, if it's a shooting that happens in the city, or if it's a shooting that happens in the parish. Because I can tell you, no matter where it happens, both departments are going, along with anybody else that's got a radio that can hear. You know, everybody's going there. So we just want to make sure that we're doing the upfront stuff, so we don't have to think about it or talk about it when something, God forbid, it should happen.
I appreciate you putting this on the agenda. I appreciate Taylor and Mr. Bowman bringing it up, Mr. Jocelyn. Really appreciate your information. I would hope that we continue with this in the sense of next step, maybe walkthroughs at different schools and so forth. We'll wait to hear from Mr. Cooley on that. And would encourage you to make as many as you can. Learn what you can.
Yeah, I mean, just in the discussion, you learn a lot. First thing I did was come up here and talk to Mr. Ramsey, because I'm thinking fences. There's several things we need to do. You know, we talked about the difference in elementary school and high school. The elementary school, the threat's probably gonna come from outside. Mr. Ramsey's like, I don't believe the same thing in high school. So what do you mean? The threat's not, more than likely, statistics show the threat is gonna come from within instead of outside. So, you know, it's something you don't think about if you're not looking at it. So, yeah, I mean, the chances of an elementary, it would be from outside, and the high school from inside. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and I think that's why getting everybody together, it brings out a lot.
Okay. That was the last agenda item. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Been moved by Mr. Taylor. Second by Ms. Henry. Any objection? Hearing none,